The screech of tires cut through the quiet night like a scream, followed by a deafening crash. Smoke and fire rose from the mangled car that had skidded off the road. Most people would have frozen, staring from a distance, helpless. But not him. James, a single dad working as a janitor at a nearby office building, sprinted toward the chaos without thinking. He didn't have a cape or a badge, only a pair of worn-out gloves and a heart that refused to stand by. As he reached the burning car, flames licking the steel frame, he saw her trapped inside, unconscious, the heat threatening to consume everything. With adrenaline sharpening every sense, James pried open the car door and hauled her out, coughing through the smoke, feeling the skin on his arms burn. When she finally opened her eyes, groaning and disoriented, he braced himself for gratitude. But her first words were not thank you. Instead, she spat out, "Who are you? Do you even know what you're doing?" James froze, the words stinging more than the fire. She was a woman used to power, control, and perfect appearances, a CEO who ran a billion-dollar company. And here he was, just a janitor, soaked in soot, trembling from the weight of adrenaline and smoke inhalation. He wanted to explain, to tell her he didn't think, he just acted. But instead, he simply said, "I had to save you." Her eyes, a mix of suspicion and fear, met his. That was the beginning of something neither of them expected, a story of humanity, courage, and the invisible struggles people carry. James returned home that night to his small apartment, greeted by the laughter of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She was asleep in the living room, drawing a crayon masterpiece on scraps of paper. Being a single dad wasn't easy. Every paycheck barely covered rent and bills, every evening was a careful balance between work and parenting. Yet, he carried a quiet pride that his daughter slept in a safe home, that she knew she was loved. That same pride now mingled with disbelief over the night's events. He had saved a life, pulled someone from death's edge, and yet her first words had cut deeper than any fire. How could someone so powerful and poised not recognize the cost of courage? Meanwhile, the news had erupted. Videos from nearby traffic cameras went viral, showing a man in janitor's clothes risking everything for a stranger. Headlines praised the unknown hero, while she, the CEO, sat in the hospital, bewildered, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't reconcile the image of her own survival with the man covered in soot and scratches. She was used to commanding meetings, negotiating deals, and controlling outcomes. But here was someone who acted purely, without calculation or reward, and the contrast was jarring. The CEO, whose name was Vanessa, realized she had underestimated the world beyond her office walls. The next chapter began quietly, almost painfully. Vanessa insisted on meeting him, not out of gratitude, but out of curiosity, maybe guilt. She found James in the same modest janitorial closet where he spent lunch breaks, sipping cheap coffee and untangling mop strings like he untangled the chaos in his life one small task at a time. When she confronted him, her words were hesitant, stiff. "I want to understand why you risked yourself for me. I don't know how to process this." James shrugged, the weight of his exhaustion settling in. "I didn't think about it. I just did what had to be done." He thought about Lily, about the nights he stayed awake worrying she'd be safe, and realized that protecting someone, anyone, felt instinctual. Vanessa studied him, really studied him, for the first time. Not as a CEO looking down on a stranger, but as a person witnessing bravery and decency. Something in her shifted. For the first time, she saw a world that couldn't be measured in stocks, profits, or PowerPoints. Days turned into weeks, their interactions became more frequent. Vanessa, struggling with vulnerability for the first time in her life, began visiting James and Lily. She brought toys for Lily, not expensive gifts, but thoughtful things she knew a child would treasure. She helped James with minor expenses, repairs to the apartment, medical bills, but never as charity. It was an exchange of respect, slowly dismantling walls both had built over years. James saw a woman who was more than her title. Vanessa saw a man whose quiet strength had saved not just her life, but reminded her of the humanity she had long buried under ambition. The story reached its emotional peak when Lily, unaware of the complexities between them, tugged Vanessa's hand and said, "You don't have to be scared, she's my friend too." That simple innocence made Vanessa break down, realizing that gratitude, when mixed with humility and human connection, was more profound than words could ever capture. She finally said the words James had longed to hear, "Thank you, truly." But James smiled softly, shaking his head. No, he said gently, don't thank me. Just promise me you'll live, and that you'll remember that sometimes courage comes from ordinary people. By the end, both had changed. Vanessa learned humility and empathy, while James learned that heroism didn't need recognition, it needed heart. Together, they demonstrated that bravery isn't measured by title or wealth, but by the choices made when no one else is watching. And in that smoky night, in that moment between life and death, a janitor proved that love, courage, and humanity could ignite a chain of change stronger than fire itself. The story lingered in people's minds, not because of the fire, nor the fame, but because of a truth too often forgotten, that heroes are everywhere, sometimes in the quietest corners, and that gratitude, humility, and compassion can transform even the coldest hearts.